Alright, hey guys, this is Andrew from 365 Pursuit. I'm going to be talking to you today about front of center calculations and also setting up some of these Gold Tip Pro Hunter 75-95s. These are the arrows that I'm going to be shooting this fall for the hunting season, and I'm going to be setting them up, and I'm also going to show you some of the different things that you could do to adjust your front of center. I really like these Gold Tips. I've been shooting Gold Tip for a long time. One of the things that's unique about their arrows versus some of the other manufacturers is that these arrows are 100% pure carbon. Some of the other manufacturers mix fiberglass in with the carbon, and what happens is when you mix in the fiberglass, you don't get the straightness out of them that you do with these Gold Tip. Not only are they the toughest arrows out there, but Gold Tip also put these along with some of the other manufacturers' arrows up against a bend test where they would bend each one, and Gold Tip was the only one that returned back to the exact same straightness as before the bend test, and that's because, again, it's 100% pure carbon, so it's always going to go back to the same straightness, which is real important because these arrows are flexing when you're shooting them, and straightness is a big factor in your accuracy. So when we talk about front of center, there's a lot of different opinions out there, a lot of different ways to do it. What I try and do is I try and get my front of center measurement, which I'm going to show you how you calculate that here in just a minute, but I try and get mine right around 11%. I found out that that works best for me for my bow, and some people will tell you anywhere from 7 to 15%. Again, it's kind of up to you. You got to shoot it through your bow and find out what works best for you, but I'm shooting for 11% on mine. Okay, so when you're figuring out your front of center, there's a couple things that you're going to need. The first thing, obviously, that you're going to need is the arrow that you plan on shooting. The second thing that I use is the tip that I plan on shooting. I'm shooting the 2-inch 100-grain Schwacker broadheads. It's what I've been shooting for a while, and I really like them. So go ahead and screw that into your arrow, because the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to figure out the overall length of our arrow. So obviously you're going to need a tape measure, and then as we go through, I'll tell you some of the other tools that you're going to need. So the first thing that you're going to do is get the overall length. To do that, we want to take from the knock tip all the way to the tip of the broadhead. So as I do that, my arrows are going to be 30 inches in length. Now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and write that down so that you can remember that, because that's going to come in later. Once you've figured out the overall length, you're going to divide that by 2. So for me, it's 15 inches. That's going to be the actual center of my arrow. Not necessarily the balance point, but it's the actual center of the arrow. Alright, so once you've figured out the actual center of your arrow, the next thing you need to do is figure out your balance point. The easiest way to do that is to find something with a sharp edge that you can balance it on. One of the problems that I always have is the arrow tries to roll off it. So what I use is I use this wrench for Gold Tip, and what you do is, I'll be using this later on, but this is to put the weights inside your insert, but the bend in it, and really the bend in any Allen wrench will work perfect because the arrow doesn't roll, but it'll allow you to balance it. So what I do is I just go ahead and lean it up against something stable, and then I try and get my arrow to balance on it. Okay, so once you've figured out your balance point, what you want to do is mark that spot, and then you're going to measure from that spot to the front of your arrow, and you're going to write that distance down. For me, it was 12 3/4 inches. And then once you've written that down, what you want to do is subtract that number from half of your arrow. So for me, it's 15, subtract 12 3/4 inches, and what I end up with is 2 1/4 inches. So my balance point is 2 1/4 inches from in front of the center of my arrow. Then what you're going to do is you want to turn that into a percentage. So what I'll do is I'll take 2 1/4 and I'll divide that by the overall length of my arrow, which is 30. So 2 1/4 divided by 30 gives me a 7.5% front of center. Again, like I said in the beginning, I'm shooting for 11%, so now I've got to try and find a way to weight down the front of my arrow. There's a couple different options. Some of the things you can do is you can put a bigger tip on, and then the other option that I like, and what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to use some of these weights that are made by Gold Tip, and what they are is they're weights that you can drop in from the knock end of your arrow, and they'll screw into the back side of any Gold Tip insert. Each one of these is 10 grains. I did this before on some of my other arrows, so I know that it takes 2 of these to get me to my 11%. So to put these in, what I'm going to do is I'm using the HD pin nocks on my arrows. I'm going to go ahead and take the knock off, which will leave me with the bushing here. And then I'm going to use a set of pliers. What I did is I took some electrical tape and wrapped it around my pliers so that it doesn't damage the bushings at all. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this bushing out, and then I can go ahead, I can get one of these weights and I'll go ahead and drop it in, and I'll show you how I use the wrench to screw these in. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop these weights in, and then using this wrench that I used to figure out my balance point earlier, I'm going to go ahead, push them all the way up to the insert. Once they hit the insert, they should start threading themselves, and it only takes about 2 or 3 turns until these are tight. And then I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I did this before, so I know I need 2 in here. I'm going to go ahead and drop that second one in, twist it in again. Once it's tight, and I know it's tight, then I can go ahead and put my knock back in. Once you've got your knock back on, you want to go ahead and recheck your balance point. Okay, so once you find the balance point after you've adjusted, you want to do exactly the same thing that you did the first time. You're going to measure from that balance point to the end of your arrow. For me this time, it was 11 3/4 inches, which left me with 3 1/4 inches here that I am front of center. So I'm once again going to take that 3 1/4 inches and divide that by the overall length of my arrow, which is 30. And what it gives me is 10.8%, which is really close to my 11, and it's actually what I'm going to stick with. I could put more weight in the front if I wanted it to be higher, but again, I've shot these before, and this is what works out best for me. So I'm going to leave it at the 10.8%. And that's how you calculate your front of center. Again, it's really important that the arrow stabilize from the front. If it's from the back, you're going to get some erratic flight, but if you stabilize it, it's a little bit heavier in the front. It's going to be a lot more stable in the wind, and it's going to provide you better accuracy. So I really recommend using these Gold Tip Pro Hunters as well as their weight system. They make it very simple to adjust your front of center, and it's something that you could do in 5 minutes in your garage just like I did, and it'll really help you tighten up those groups and hopefully help you kill some bigger animals.